Alright, Ninja, so today, finishing up with the new character showcases, today we're checking out the new Ichibei. Finally, we have received a playable Ichibei, the first initial one being kind of disappointing on release, given the fact that he's such an important character in the story in terms of Bleach lore, but they ended up making him a Brave Battle character. So right now, in my opinion, it's really cool that we got another one, especially playable, and this character, I'm not gonna lie, is already to a certain extent underrated. He has one problem about him, which we will highlight in this video, but honestly, it's not even that big a deal, as much as people are making it out to be. So Ichibei, first up, is a Tekken Storypa Squad Zero character with the Storypa and Quincy kill ability. I love that they are still giving characters 2 killers outside of anniversaries. Remember, 2 killers on a character was treated only for anniversary characters and also Burn the Witch characters. Nowadays, if you are a big character, important as someone like Ichibei, for example, you can get 2 killers outside of an anniversary, and I do believe Ichibei does deserve 2 killers, and in this case, it's a good set of killers. Storypa and also Quincy, I like the combination. I don't think it's bad. Now, the problem with this character, which you will see, is the way they designed him. Because he does have Gauge Rampage, they designed him very similar to Halloween Nini, who in of itself is a great character. She was designed for Limit Breaker, she's good in Limit Breaker, and she's also really good in Guild Quest content. But she had a problem. When you completed the Gauge, she didn't have the recharge ability, so that meant that your strong attacks weren't coming back as fast, and there was that downtime when using her when the Gauge wasn't full. Because when the Gauge isn't full, the damage output is actually on the lower end. 5th anniversary low end. It's kind of bad to a certain extent. I'll explain why it's not that bad in a minute. So yeah, when the Gauge is active, he has Frenzy +1, and I believe a 50% Berserker, which again is quite low. But when the Gauge is active, he gets a 50% SP boost, an additional Frenzy, so Frenzy +2, and 100% Berserker. So when the Gauge is active, for those 10 seconds, he has a ridiculously high damage output. Now, to help him keep the Gauge and technically loop it non-stop, he starts the Gauge with 70%, which is great. Adore that skill in Guild Quest content. Again, he has Gauge Rampage, so not only is using attacks, strong attacks, normal attacks, soul bombs, it increases the Gauge meter, every kill he gets also increases it. And this allows him to stack the Gauge faster than any other Gauge character in the game, but the advantage he has that makes him better when compared to Nini, that lessens the downside of this character, is that again, when he does complete the Gauge, it does reduce the strong attacks by 30%. So if your Gauge is about to be active, you use your SF3, you activate it, well now all your strong attacks are almost ready to go, or most will be back in like 4 seconds time. And that alleviates and lessens the drawback of him having low damage output when the Gauge isn't active. So in my opinion, this might be the perfect Gauge character. Especially when you consider the other skills too. One of the things that I did notice that I didn't like about Nini again was the lack of the recharge, but also a Soulbomb didn't do that much damage. And in his case, Ichibei has Bombardment +1 and also weaker defense. So again, in Guild Quest and Limit Breaker, where Soulbomb damage still does matter to a certain extent, this just makes him even better. He's definitely a contender for one of the best tech characters in the game, and we're going to see how he does perform in content in today's video. So for the accessory that we are going to be using, we are using a Lieutenant's Badge, a Artisanal T-Set, and also a Fortification Pill. Links include Soifon with 14% recharge, 16% SAD, Cacao Society Gin with recharge and full stamina, and then once more Chad with full stamina and also recharge. Bonus abilities include full stamina and also focus. Lucky for Ichibei since he comes built in with Long Stride. I always like to play with Long Stride on my character, but since he has it built in, you might as well give him focus to get those guaranteed criticals, especially considering the fact he also has weakened defense. There's like no other bonus ability you can give him. If you have him 2-5, at that point, you might as well give him SP, so he just overall does a tad bit more damage. Alright then, so jumping into single player IT, first up, let's see how he does. So for the most part, see how he can potentially stack the Gauge. So one thing, honestly, my biggest complaint with this character is the fact that he doesn't have complete stats immunity. I think Ichibei does deserve to be super broken, and I think he is to a certain extent. It's just the lack of immunity is kind of weird to me. I feel like he should have been given all stats immunity, especially because he does have 2 killers and he wants to be used in 2 different guild quests. He only has paralysis immunity, which is only good for the melee Quincy guild quest. So honestly, that right now is the biggest gripe. But his SA1 is going to be a vacuum vortex in front of him. Does come out really fast, and that's what I like about him. Like you can see that you're rarely ever locked in for a long period of time. His SA3, of course, is going to be a full screen. And then his SA2 is going to be a beam in front of him. If we use it now, it's actually Teppu Satsu, which I think looks really cool, especially with the new color scheme that he does have going for him. So, yeah, as you can see here, we are one-shotting enemies when the Gauge is active. When the Gauge isn't active, keep in mind we are in single-player IT without killer. We're still doing a decent amount of damage, to be fair. It's not too bad, but you can see here with like 2 strong attacks that we did use here, 2 more NAD hits, and NAD string, by the way, looks really cool. the gauge is already back. So while he does have that downtime of not being able to do a lot of damage, you're not in that state for long. You're really not. And with the long strike that he does have, he's able to get in and out contents or rooms super quick. So you can see here, for example, gauge is basically back to like 80%. Where at that point, we just have to use 2 strong attacks. And then we get to use our SA3. Gauge is back. And then again, look, our SA3 is back in 3 seconds. That makes such a huge difference, especially when you take him into Limit Breaker and also Guild Quest. You're going to have the SA3 just one shot there. But in Guild Quest, for example, you know, not only is activating the gauge going to reduce your strong attack, you're also going to have those like 2 seconds in between each phase where your strong attacks are also recharging, but the gauge effect is staying the same. So he is going to be ridiculously OP in Guild Quest, even at 1 out of 5. And in that case, a 1 minute and 39 second clear time in single player IT without killer is actually on the slower end. We weren't trying to go for a fast run. Let's try that once more. So let's see if we can actually get a faster clear time here. If anything, I might need to give the character hidden enemies. And you can see there, I guess this is a good time to show it, right? You know, we aren't immune to every status summon in the game. That's something you might want to do. I think if you have the character 2-5 and you have those guaranteed criticals, you can probably afford to give him any type of status immunity depending on the content you are bringing him in. Because right now we definitely are noticing the lack of healing capabilities. That's one bad thing about him, definitely. And that again mainly comes from the fact that he doesn't have any status immunities. So he took a bit of burn damage and we basically have no way of getting back up to full stamina, which does suck to a certain extent. So when you outplay him, that's something you have to keep in mind, right? If hypothetically I was taking him into single player IT, if hypothetically I was taking him to co-op IT, I definitely would want to give him that immunity, which again you can kind of do reliably since he does have long shot and weakened defense built in. You can afford to give him that status immunity through a bonus ability. But then, of course, you are losing on the extra DPS of not getting guaranteed criticals. So maybe if you had him 2-5 and you are actively using him in IC or any content where there are a bunch of status ailment pools on the floor where you're not immune, yeah, you can safely give him that immunity and be basically fine with it. So let's use our SA3, activated the gauge, Ichigo goes down, 83k damage there on the SA3. That is absolutely perfect. So I think that second run, despite it actually being faster there, is an example of the problems that he does have. And again, it just really comes down to the fact that he's not immune to every status summon. Like, the only complaint I saw for this character was that he has Frenzy +1 when the gauge is inactive. But you'll see here, that's not a problem. It's really not. The only problem that he has right now is the fact that he does not have any status immunity, only paralysis, which again is only for the Guild Quest he wants to be used in. Let's go back here, use our SA2. Damn, those enemies spawned right behind us. That is unfortunate. Let's use our Nat String when we can. I'm going to save my SA3. I don't want to just use it just yet. We're going to use the SA3 to activate the gauge. I think that's the best way to go about him. Let's use our SA2. He also does not have hidden enemies. That's not much of a big deal, but it's something to keep in mind because there are a few hidden enemies in this particular quest. Using your Soul Bomb's always good because, again, it activates the gauge 50%, fills it up more so, and that allows us to have the gauge. How many times have we had it in this quest? Close to 3 times, maybe definitely twice. Into the final room. Let's grab the Soul Bomb once more and turn Ichigo into a Black Ant. You know, I like the Soul Bomb. And I believe there, in that case, using the Soul Bomb again, it did almost activate his gauge. Had the enemy survived, we could have used the strong attack to activate the gauge once more. But remember, when you do use your Soul Bomb, you're applying weakened defense. So I really like that about the character. You want to use your Soul Bomb on this character because it does fill up the gauge by 50%. But then you also get the benefit of potentially using the Soul Bomb. You get deactivate the gauge, your strong attacks recharge, and now not only are you doing more damage, but you've also applied weakened defense and weakening. That's absolutely insane. I don't think people are giving this character enough credit. Alright then, so jumping into the next run, we are now in Co-op Ultra IT. In this case, you're going to notice here, you know, we are going to have to use a few strong attacks on certain enemies, especially because we don't have killer. But what we have to be careful of here is not taking damage. SA3 went off though. That's doing a lot of damage there. Let's use the SA2. It is a beam forwards. SA3 is back, so we get to use it again while the gauge is active. Maybe should have positioned myself careful here, or better there. But for the most part, you can see here, basically one strong attack is enough to activate the gauge once it wears off, which I think is really cool. Let's use our SA2, then use our SA3. We definitely get to spam strong attacks. Again, I just have to be... The only problem I have right now in Co-op IT is that we have to be a tad bit careful with our gameplay here because we aren't immune to status ailments. But, you know, you are going to still have that downside or downtime of not doing damage. Unfortunately, enemies are weirdly placed there. Let's use our SA3 into the 1. Took like 2 strong attacks there. 70% of the gauge is full. So now we have the slow time. Honestly, it's not that bad generally. Now, in this case, let's use our SA3 here. And I feel like we could have actually killed that entire wave or that entire room significantly quicker had we positioned ourselves better with our strong attacks. So in this case, the boss is spawned in. Again, 1 or 2 strong attacks, 1 nurturing for the most part. We're going to use our SA3 to activate it. SA3 goes off. Basically one-shots the bosses, despite having killer here. That was really good. And I believe next stage is actually the final boss. It is. Wow. That's not bad. That's not bad, generally. So in this case, we get to use our SA3. Do that. Basically almost one-shot the bosses. Now let's use the Soul Bomb. That's going to fill up the gauge, but it's also going to apply weakening and, again, weaken defense. So even if we now lose our gauge abilities, no, we don't. It's back up. 90k. Done. Done. That was good. That was good. Damage output once more, not an issue. Not an issue. A 1 minute and 48 second clear time, lads, with no killer. Had he had killer, it probably would go down to around 1 minute and 30, which honestly is very in line with other characters that we consider some of the best characters in the game that almost have no downside, right? Paris or Rukia got a very similar clear time, and she has Rampage. She almost has no negatives, and she had killer and had a very similar clear time to Ichibe. Kyogre can clear a tad bit faster, but again, Kyogre is absolutely broken. And I feel like we can get a tad bit faster, which I guess we'll try in our next run. Alright then, let's try it. Let's see how this one does go. Probably should or want to give this character hidden enemies because I know there are a few here. Let's use our nurturing not to activate the gauge just yet. Again, we want to make sure we don't get immune or inflicted with the burn. Let's go here. Use our SA2. Not the best positioning, but that's fine. Let's use our SA1 there to take them out because we do want to go into the next stage to activate our SA3. Let's just use it now. Unfortunately, used it a tad bit too short. That's fine though. SA2 on those lads. Can use my nurturing just 3 times. That activates the gauge. Let's use that SA1 again. Try and get into a good position. SA2 it down. Look at that. Beautiful. Once more, you can see here, gauge is almost full. At this point, we just have to use a few nat hits as we wait for our strong attacks to come back. And then it's back again. So the next time we get to use our SA3, which we're not going to do just yet. Let's back up here. Use our SA2. Then use our SA3. Then 1. Didn't position myself the best there again. Think I could have stood up a tad bit more. But we did apply weaken at least, so even though we had lost the gauge there, we still basically had just use 1 more strong attack. And then those down periods where we are moved to the next stage also do help us here. So let's go here, use our SA3. Probably should learn the mouse, but I think the lack of hidden enemies here is actually kind of hurting us to a certain extent. Let's use our SA1. Go here, SA3. Look at that. Look at that. It does enough damage. Wow, that was great. It did enough damage there that just before the gauge wore off, we only had to use like 1 strong attack once more. And the gauge is back again, boys. The gauge is back again. SA3. Let's Soul Bomb. And the Soul Bomb killed. Man, this character is insane. If your complaint was that, again, oh, Frenzy +1 when the gauge is inactive, you haven't played with this character, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. This is the perfect gauge character. And that is a 1 minute and 33. That is Kyogre level clear time without killer. Without killer. This character is great. This character is great. Ichibe deserved a broken character. And sure, he's not perfect. The only complaint I have from him right now is the lack of immunities. I would have preferred if he had full stats immunity, and he had that. I think I would safely say he's the best technique character in the game. Because he doesn't have that, maybe I won't, but he's definitely in contention for the best technique character in the game. Right now, it's between him, Toshiro, and Quincy Ichigo. They all do different things. They're all great for different reasons. And I feel like whoever you consider the best of those 3 really comes down to personal preference. I feel like Technique needed a character like this, and I really do like him. I've been waiting for a playable Ichibe, and I am perfectly satisfied with this character. My only complaint about this character, again, besides the immunities, is that I didn't get enough of him. I got him once. I would have preferred to have gotten this character duped out. And I have 2 technique move sources. I shouldn't, but I want to use one to get that focus slot because, damn, this character is kind of insane. Next up, we're going to be taking Ichibe into the Ultra UR Epic Raid. Currently is a bonus character, so he is getting more damage. Keep that in mind. But the boss does have 50 million HP. For our very first run, we are going to try a solo run, see how that does go. Once more, these are my familiars, so we are getting around 120% more damage from these alone. Keep that in mind. We do get more SP. That's important because we do have the SP boost. These are my accessories. These are my links this time around. Usually I do go with full stamina and also strong attack damage, but I think in his case, having recharge and full stam strong attack damage is more ideal because you do want to, you know, fill the gauge, right? So it's better off just to give him more recharge, especially in the case where we're only by ourselves. Now, in this case, it would usually be where I give the character weakened defense, but again, the good thing about him is that he already has it built in. We do not need to give him double weakened defense. Focus here, 20% more damage almost is better than having 30% more damage in only one particular phase. And you know who better to try Ichibe than the Black Ant himself, Yhwach, right? So in this case, we're going to use our strong attacks wisely here. SA3. Unfortunately, we do have to have, you know, some downside. We have to wait to use our strong attacks, but we activated the gauge there. Let's go to the side, use our SA2. Looks like we're doing 300k per hit. Is that what I saw when the gauge is active? It looks like it. Let's use our nurturing when we can. Looks like for the most part, we almost went through the entire first phase with the 10 seconds of gauge abilities that we did have. We're going to use our Soulbomb on this particular phase. Maybe shouldn't have done that, but look at that, 500k per hit. SA1 is not the greatest when it comes to doing damage when it actually locks you in place. So you have to be a tad bit careful when using that SA1 in this particular raid, or any epic raid for the most part. Now let's use our nurturing and also strong attacks. Unfortunately, we couldn't attack previously, but it's fine. We're going to use our nurturing. Gauge is already back. In this case, SP boost, SA2. Let's go forwards. Here we go, SA3, 300k per hit. Look at that. 1 minute and 5 seconds for this character to do 50 million damage. Insane. Absolutely insane. And keep in mind, we did have to wait a couple seconds there because you can't always attack Yuha. He does have those barriers. If you attack in the wrong position, in the wrong place, it pushes you back. And in a way, that kind of helps us too because we can't attack anyway, but our strong attacks are recharging. And again, that helps us increase the gauge, right? But let's try one more run in the Ultra UI Epic Raid, this time with a potential full lobby of Ichibais. All right then, so into our final run, we have a full Ichibei lobby here. You know, we have some Ichibais not entirely worked on. That's fine though. It shouldn't matter all too much. Let's jump into it though. In terms of clear time, this should be a tad bit faster, assuming I don't take any damage here, because I assume, not to brag or anything, I'll be the main DPS here. I would like to use my Soulbomb, but using Soulbomb off the get-go is kind of awkward, I will say. So I'm just going to play it safe here. Wait for maybe a good time to use my Soulbomb. If anything, let's use it now. Probably didn't have to because, you know, it doesn't help out my gauge. It might be better just to wait for the next phase. But assuming any Ichibei here wants to use their Soulbomb, that would be really good. It does apply weakened defense. Why is no one using their Soulbomb? There we go. With Ichibei runs, it should be super quick because everyone should be getting the gauge abilities off. And then the weakened defense just lets us all do damage, right? Let's go to the top. SA1. Unfortunately, the SA1 had a bit of like a long animation and I died. That is so unfortunate. The SA1 had like 2 parts to the attack. So even though I had used the SA1 first, before the rear shield went off, it's still actually me. Which is fine though, to be fair, it's not that bad. Because in this case, we can't do damage anyway. The shields are all up. So let me use my Soulbomb now. This is one bad thing, I guess, about any gauge character, is that the gauge was almost full. But unfortunately, now that I died, it's gone back to square one. This would have been the part where I would have had the gauge abilities. But it's not that big a deal, to be fair. We're gonna clear anyway. So funny enough, actually slower with other people. Don't know how that worked. I know how it worked. I died. I ended up dying. I was the main DPS in our team, so that's kind of on me. But we'll end it there. We'll end it there. Regardless, even though that was like a kind of a bad run, we still cleared relatively fast, considering that we are, you know, going against a 50 million HP boss. But you can see there is real damage potential with Ichibei. By myself, I was able to get a 1 minute clear time. So assuming I actually don't mess up in a given run and some Ichibeis don't die, 2 people learn the pattern, they don't attack when the shields are up, you can potentially get a 30-second run with Ichibei, which is actually kind of impressive. So with that said, lads, that was the showcase today for the Mad Monk himself, Ichibei Yoshibe. And you know what? This isn't even going to be the final showcase for this character. We do know at the upcoming Limit Breaker quest, which is coming out in less than a week's time, this character is, of course, going to be amazing in that particular quest for slot number 1. It is kind of designed for him in the first place. But then also Guild Quest, right? He's going to be really good there. Nini was amazing in Guild Quest. You can only imagine how good Ichibei is going to be, given the fact that he does get the extra recharge and also the bombardment weakened defense. So we expect more videos with this character in the upcoming like week or 2, trying him out in those different quests. And I didn't even mention he's also an arena character. So yeah, I think I'm confident in saying Ichibei is the best tech character in the game. He's amazing. He's great. The one bad thing that people complained about him, nitpicked him before he even came out, was the low damage output when the gauge is inactive. But as you saw in this video, doesn't matter. It does not matter. It mattered with Nini because she didn't have the recharge when the gauge was full. Ichibei has it, and trust me, it makes a massive difference. As I've already stated multiple times in the video, the only complaint I have about this character is the lack of full stat immunity. Not every character does need it, but given Ichibei's status, I really feel like he should have had all stat immunity, and had he had that, yeah, he would have been absolutely perfect. But that's one thing you got to keep in mind when playing with this character, if it does matter at all. But in my opinion, that is almost easily solved by getting the character duped out. If you have him 2-5, you don't need to give him the focus bonus ability, because at that point, if you have a 1000 focus, you're already guaranteed to hit criticals anyway. And since he has weakened defense and also long stride, there's almost nothing else to give him. You could give him SP to get a tad bit more damage out of him, but he's already doing more damage to begin with him. With the guaranteed criticals, you're fine. So at that point, if you have him 2-5, you can change that bonus ability to fire duration, weakened duration, depending on the quest that you are going against. and then you can just potentially use a link alongside the bonus ability to give them immunity and almost fix the one problem that I have with this character. So yeah, Technique as an attribute is absolutely insane as is. So it takes a lot for a character to be up there and be a contender for one of the best characters in the attribute. And I think Ichibei is definitely up there. In my opinion, as of this initial gameplay, maybe my thoughts will change over the next week or two. I think he's the best tech character. Is he entirely needed? No. Again, you can always go without him. But if you have him, I think you would definitely be surprised by his gameplay. I had a blast playing him today. His gameplay definitely surprised me. But I was expecting Halloween Nini but better. And that's exactly what I got with this particular character. He's amazing. He's the best base character in the game. Perfected. But it can get better. In the future, maybe we can get a character exactly the same as Ichibei, but friendly +2 as the base damage and all stats immunity, and at that point that would be the perfect gauge character. But Ichibei is definitely pushing it. In the comments below, let me know what you guys think about this character. I'm curious to know what your opinions are. For me, he definitely surprised me. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. See you guys next time. Take care and peace.